Welcome to Authors Alcove, the healing place. I am your host, Agnes Wolff. Today I have Bonnie R. Armstrong. She is the author of An Apparently Normal Person, From Medical Mystery to Dissociative Superpower. She is the little old lady from Pasadena, just like the Beach Boys sing about. She grew up in California during the Korean War, and air raid drills were her backdrop. She is the second of 7 children and is now married with 2 children. She is the founding member of the Los Angeles Roundtable for Children, the Children's Planning Council, and the Pasadena Commission for Children and Youth. She also has a dissociative disorder, which she feels helped her become the person she is today. Thank you for joining me today, Bonnie.
Thank you very much, Angie. I'm glad to see you.
Yeah, I would like to know just a little bit about yourself and what inspired you to write this book.
Well, it came to me very late in life. My body had fell apart when I was in my 50s, and I learned then that there wasn't anything medically wrong with me. I had this mental health issue based in childhood trauma, and I thought that is really weird that I could live this whole apparently normal life and then have very physical symptoms that no doctor could diagnose. And I just thought that maybe at my age, if I could help somebody else who was having that same issue, because the mind body connection, I learned so much about the mind body connection as my own body really fell apart. I was in, like it says, medical mystery. I was in a wheelchair for, anything longer than my cane would take me. And yet as as my mental health improved, my physical health improved. And so I thought, this is a strange story, and I'm going to tell it because it will maybe help somebody else accept the fact that our minds can have great impact on our bodies.
I know one of the things that I have learned in my own studies and everything is that there's a strong link between childhood trauma and any type of disease, but specifically inflammatory diseases. But what I find interesting is how, like, as you were treating your own mental health, you were literally healing your own body. But before we get to that, I did want to just define what a dissociative disorder is. I know that there's several different kinds, but first just kind of define what it is and then what type you have.
Sure. Dissociative disorders come about usually based in childhood trauma, where the child is faced with what appears to be, what feels like life-threatening issues that they can't escape. And so the child's mind creates somebody else to take care of it because it's too much for me. And that can happen multiple times. So a dissociative disorder is generally accompanied with amnesia. We forget in chunks of what happened because someone else is holding on to it for us. And often, as in my case, a very strong outward personality that takes over, maybe 2 or 3 outward personalities that take over daily life while the others inside are hiding the trauma. Dissociative disorders are as prevalent, the numbers show us that they are as prevalent as bipolar disorder or schizophrenia, but they're much less talked about. People aren't taught about them even in schools of psychology or in medical schools. And so we're often misdiagnosed, as I was for 6 years. And the average is about 10 to 12 years that we're misdiagnosed because people aren't looking for that as the answer to whatever the presenting issue is. And luckily, I came across a really fabulous neurologist who, when she couldn't figure it out any other way, she said, I think there's probably a psychological aspect to what's going on for you. And I told her she was crazy, but she was absolutely right.
I know, like, in the past, they used to call it like split personality disorder or multiple
Multiple
personality disorder.
personality disorder, right? Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of misrepresentation and misunderstanding. So when you're defining what it is, can you also just define what it is not?
Well, one of the media tropes is that we're violent, is that at least one or more of our alters, of our internal people, will be violent, and that maybe makes for good movies, but it isn't true. I mean, this is the face of a dissociative disorder. The little old lady from Pasadena, as you said, and we're much more likely to be the victims of violence than we are to be the perpetrators of it. So that's, one myth. The other myth that I already mentioned is that we're terribly rare and you'll never see it. Well, actually, we're not all that rare. But our presenting issues sometimes are hidden, hide the trauma. And it's really exciting that the psychological world, the medical world, is beginning to move toward treating the underlying trauma, helping us heal from the underlying trauma, rather than only dealing with the thing that they see, like the eating disorder or the addiction or the whatever. And that's a very exciting and long awaited shift in the world of treatment.
What I found very interesting when I was reading your book is that, you didn't know any of these other alters or alternate personalities existed until how old were you?
57, I think, when
50.
they finally started coming forward. 50 when they started coming forward in body memories.
And what is interesting is as they came forward, then so did some of the memories that those particular alters had. Can you describe like how that is that, that these when you I guess met them, I don't know how else to explain it, met them, you then ended up learning of some memories that you didn't have yourself. Can you just kind of explain that for people?
Sure. The In my case, and not all cases are the same, so this I'm just speaking for myself in this. The In my case, the body memories came out before the mental memories came out. So my legs were exhibiting symptoms that were similar to things that had actually happened to us in our childhood. And but I didn't know that. And so one when we finally moved to a psychologist to be, instead of a neurologist, to be the primary care person, and the internal folks began to feel more safe, because that was terribly important. And they'd give me pictures of the memories of the actual thing that happened that caused my legs to feel bad. Medical experiments were done on me as a child, shock treatments to my legs and other things like that, that my body was showing me what it was that it felt like back 50 years, well, 45 years before. That was very hard to believe. But what was real was that every time I'd get one of those memories, it'd be awful. The next day, my legs would work better. The next day, I'd be able to walk a little farther, or the brain fog would dissipate some. And so my healing journey started with my body showing me the way, and and proving to me that this was the path I needed to go down. I needed to find the memories that were connected to each of those symptoms, and the internal people who were holding those memories. And then I could get on a healing journey.
And one of the things you just said was that it was kind of hard for you to believe. When did you start to realize that these memories had actually happened and that they weren't just something that your mind was making up?
Oh, I questioned that for a long time. I probably about 5 years into therapy, I began to I began to actually meet individual alters about 5 years in, and they had given us their story. They and had now felt safe in the green room, as we called our therapist's office. And and again, the corroboration of my body healing as my mind opened was a kind of a biofeedback loop that was really helpful in teaching me to listen to my body.
And how many altars do you have? Do you know for sure?
No, I don't. There were dozens and dozens of little pieces, because the um as something big happened, the altar that was taking care of it would layer off more. We had both mind control training from my grandfather, and then the spontaneous splitting that happens when trauma is not buffered in any way. There were lots and lots of them. As they coalesced, as the stories came together and they coalesced, there were about a dozen main altars who had carried the brunt of about a dozen different kinds of trauma.
And one of the things that I love that you say is you called your dissociative disorder your superpower. How so?
Well, um, I had a wonderful life. The apparently normal person of the title had a wonderful life, and what I have learned is that my dissociative disorder, first of all, as we've just said, helped me survive some awful stuff in my childhood and grow up this outside person only knew about the good parts of my childhood. And then I had a wonderful career. I had a long marriage with and two kids and now five grandkids. And as you said in the intro, I mean, I was able to do a lot of advocacy for children and families across the country, wrote several books. It was a great life. And I thought I knew myself. That was made possible by the dissociative disorder holding back all these memories until I was in my 50s. The kids were grown. They'd already, they were in college. And then during the healing process, which took 15 years, and I think it will be a lifelong journey, we were able to use some of those very same dissociative skills to help me actually be able to function out in the real world. Well, they're both real, these worlds, but I could function while I was healing. I could function in my work world because my dissociative skills kind of held stuff until we would be in the green room and able to handle them. So the superpower that is my dissociative disorder is helped me in all three aspects of my life. My internal family really bristles at the idea of it being called a disorder, because of what it is a very elegant survival tool. And I prefer to refer to it that way.
And I know like you refer to yourself as Big Bonnie.
The internal people call me Big Bonnie. Yeah, they
Yes.
refer to me as Big Bonnie now. Yeah.
Yeah. So did Big Bonnie, were you aware at some level of the abuse that because they were the three main men in your life, basically, your uncle, your dad, and your grandfather. Were you at all aware of any sort of negative feelings towards them that you didn't understand until you discovered your alters, or was that something that you just did not even have any inkling that there was anything amiss?
There are several things that I lived with all my life that I know now were clues, but I didn't know then were clues. So yeah, I tried to kill myself when I was 12 and didn't didn't die. Then I had suicidal ideations the rest of my life. I thought that was normal. So, I mean, it was a very big clue that something was wrong, but I just normalized it. My relationship with my father, we didn't agree on much in terms of politics and So that in the 60s there was what was called the generation gap, and I just thought that my problems with my dad had to do with the generation gap, right? I always thought that uncle was pretty creepy, but he didn't live near us. As I was older, he didn't live near us, and I didn't have to see him very often, and I just didn't like him, and shut. But my memories of my grandfather were all that he was this gentle giant and very sweet and kind. And so the shock, it was much more of a shock about him, but I mean, it was a shock about any of them. They were all good guys, I thought, just we differed on things, and I have a feeling that my father was probably dissociative too. I think uh, I think he didn't know the next day what he had done the night before often, and he used alcohol as kind of his buffering. One of the things I'm going on and on, but one of the things I learned from my spiritual journey in Peru was that the elders of all these indigenous wisdom traditions that I was able to study with taught me to have compassion for the wounded souls in my ancestry. And I am forever blessed with that construct, because I don't know what happened to my grandfather to turn him into this mad scientist. I don't know what happened to my father. I don't know what happened to my uncle. I don't know what caused them to believe that they had the right to hurt me. But I'm pretty sure something did. I'm pretty sure that this pain and violence goes back many generations, as the elders talked about these wounded souls. And it became my job to be the cycle breaker. It became my job to be sure that the fear, that the pain, the violence stopped with my generation. And I think pretty well it has. So that's the good news.
What do you feel has helped you the most in your own personal healing journey to get to the point where you are right now, where you're even able to be like, oh, they did that because, they had their own issues?
Well, first of all, I have had a fabulous therapist, a PhD psychologist who has been with me from the beginning. Or who I've been with from the beginning, and the book is dedicated to her. And one of the things that's so fabulous about her is that she doesn't necessarily go by the book or the protocol, but really worked with me in ways that allowed me to explore things outside the therapy room, outside of the structure of psychology. And so the recognition that both my mind and body needed healing, but also my spirit. There was a lot of religious craziness in the family, and the and so allowing travel to spiritual retreats in other countries among indigenous people, and in this country too, among indigenous people who were willing to share their wisdom with a fellow traveler. That some therapists might not have allowed for that, because I was still so actively having flashbacks and memories, but she did. And that, I think, the combination was incredibly helpful to me, because the religious cult kind of stuff that I grew up with was not helpful in healing my spirit. And so and what that all did was to take me out of myself a little bit, so that I could feel myself a part of something much bigger. And I think we all need that. We all, and the healing I was doing wasn't just about this little life, but it was about breaking cycles, as I said. And it was about helping other people break cycles in their families. And that's why I wrote the book.
And I know you share a lot about the different retreats that you went on in your book, and you get to hear about those experiences. But one thing that I'm very curious about, because, in the media, they like to show, somebody with this disorder or whatever you want to call it, as in they're acting this way, then all of a sudden they act completely different, and they're two very different people. But you make it sound like you actually have a relationship with all of them and that you're able to just only communicate with them during certain times. Is there ever a time when they choose to act instead of you and you don't have the option? Or is it something that you're able to have a say, as Big Bonnie has a say?
Well, yeah, first of all, I've been immensely blessed. And again, this is just my story. And another person with the same diagnosis will have a very different story. My alters have almost always been incredibly collaborative and help and wanting, and they have not fought for control of the body. They haven't fought to be the out person. They've really wanted to have me be out front and have and for them to support from inside, except for when they didn't. And one of the wonderfully exciting things about writing this book is that there are the voices of many of my alters are in the book. They helped write it. In fact, George really was the coordinator of the writing of the book. And when it came time to edit the final edit with my publisher, the as the voice in the book, and you've read most of the book, as the voice of the alter is in the book, that alter came out to help with the editing of that person's voice. There's some are men, some are women, but are girls and boys. But the alters were very clear about wanting their voice and wanting to be the one that edited their voice in the book. So when you see the different fonts, you know that that is truly the voice of different alters. And with some very few times otherwise, they have worked together to move this healing journey forward in much the same way they work together to keep this life moving forward before Big Bonnie was conscious of their existence.
Do you feel that, Big Bonnie is you and they are part of your journey?
I really refer to them as people. And they are very different. When a different alter is in the body, the eyes see differently. Some of my folks don't need glasses, and I do. The colors look different, the body is held differently, the voice is totally different. They came into existence at different developmental stages of this person's life. And so they continue with different lenses to view the world. And each of the ones who are left brings a set of skills that are really helpful to this life. I mean, I don't know what I'd do without Purple Lady. She's this deeply spiritual person that holds on to things I don't remember sometimes. And always is that calming person inside saying, just breathe, you're going to be fine. You don't have to be upset. And then, and Priestess is very clear and rigorous in her research, rigorous in her speech. BJ's trying to make peace among everybody. Jane just wants to have fun. And that's really wonderful sometimes. So I hope that helps you to feel the differences among them.
One thing that I love that you did with your journey is that you actually are starting to be a coach. Could you describe what you do and where people could reach to help your services and who you are willing to work with?
Yeah, I've been a life coach, certified life coach since about 2008. And I love coaching. And so I continue doing it. Usually I'm working with people who are in transition, some kind of life transition, that either moving from a work life into retirement, getting laid off, getting married, getting divorced, any of life's many transitions. And now I've done so much study on childhood trauma that sometimes the people who have been through therapy and have dealt with the trauma, but now are trying to get on with their lives. Now I can be particularly helpful to people with trauma backgrounds, not as a therapist, but as a coach to get on with life. My website is bonniararmstrong.com, and there's a place there, a page about coaching, and you can sign up and we can get together. I have always maintained through the whole thing a sliding scale. I don't feel like money should get in the way of anybody who's really ready to have some life coaching and to make some shifts in their life. And so I work with a sliding scale. But give me a call. Shoot me an email on the website, and we can talk.
Thank you again so much for being part of my show. But I want to ask one more question before you go. And what is the one thing that you would tell somebody who is starting on their own healing journey that you think would help them?
Trust your body. Trust your body, trust yourself, trust your alters, trust your mind, and really listen. The biggest takeaway, I think, from my book, even beyond that, is the idea, the Mayan charge to all of us in 2012 when their calendar changed, which was that the new era is going to come about as every one of us in every interaction treats each other with love and harmony. So if we can each be bringing into the world more love and harmony and helping to diffuse fear and aggression, that works internally and it works externally. So it's find your own truth and be kind.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And I also just want to thank my listeners. If you have been listening for a while, please rate my podcast. This allows not only my podcast to get before more listeners, but my author's books, such as Bonnie's, to get before more readers. If you enjoyed this episode, yes, thank you. I have my own copy. Yep. Thank you for showing. I forgot to grab my copy. If you enjoyed this episode, you might also enjoy my conversation with Merle Saferstein, author of the Several Legacy Journals, How to Use Writing as a Way to Heal. Again, I had the privilege of talking with Bonnie Armstrong, and there's her book, An Apparently Normal Person. You can also find them on their website, https://bonniararmstrong.com, and you can also go to emeraldlakebooks.com. Thank you again, Bonnie. Appreciate it.
So much, Angie. Good to see you. Take care.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for joining us at Authors Alcove, the Healing Place. We hope today's episode has touched your heart and offered you insights and inspiration for your own healing journey. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. And remember, with Scrivener, you can better craft your stories through their great organizational tools. This has definitely helped me keep consistent with my characters as I put all their information inside this tool, as well as it allows me to be able to go scene by scene rather than chapter by chapter. I really love those features. You can also support me on Patreon, as that is greatly appreciated, as that is my main source of income. You can find both of these links in the show notes. You can also listen to us on our sister podcasts, Authors Alcove, the Writing Corner, where we talk about everything from writing, publishing, to marketing, as well as Authors Alcove, the Reading Nook, where we talk reading fantasy, sci-fi, and the occasional horror. Until next time, keep healing, keep growing, and we'll meet again in the healing place.